Hey everyone, and we're glad to see you on the second lesson of our motion design course. On this lesson we will learn tools which will allow you to work with vector graphics and masks inside After Effects. We also will learn a few things about animation process. So let's start and have a look at main drawing tools. They are pretty similar to those you may have seen in Illustrator or Photoshop. You can create a simple shape or draw your own spline using Pen tool. Let's draw a rectangle, and the shape layer was automatically created on a timeline. Pay attention that all vector graphics created inside After Effects will be automatically drawn on this type of layers. We can assign fill color or stroke color and change stroke width for each drawn object. To change color of shape, press on this colorful rectangle near word fill and select any color you want. Press word fill to change fill type or remove it. Everything the same with stroke. You can edit its color and width, and edit its type or remove it. It is possible to draw each object on separate shape layer. For this, just draw a new object with no layer selected on a timeline. Now you see that the new rectangle was created on the new shape layer. But you also can draw a big amount of objects on one shape layer. For this, just keep the layer selected and simply draw new objects. Each shape layer has contents group. Each shape layer has contents group. This group contains all drawn objects, and each object has its own separate settings and properties like a shape layer has. That means that we can animate each object inside shape layer, and the whole shape layer can be animated as well. I'll animate this rectangle, open up its transform group, position, and create animation, like this. Done. And let's create animation of the whole shape layer to understand how it works. Open its transform group and animate position property. That's how it works. We move the whole shape layer and the animation of the box is happening inside it. One more useful thing is creating groups inside contents. For example, select two rectangles, press Ctrl G, and then group was created. This group can be animated as well, because it also has its own transform group. We can add new objects like basic geometric shapes, fills, strokes and other stuff using Add button. But pay special attention to the fact that all the things created using this button will be added to selected item in Contents group. One more important thing to remember is anchor point of shape layer. By default, it is automatically placed in the center of composition. If you decide to animate rectangle as separate shape layer, don't forget to change its anchor point position. Furthermore, not only shape layer has its anchor point, but also each object of contents has it. How to distinguish them? Using Selection tool, click on a layer, then press Y for Pan Behind tool, and its anchor point looks like this large icon as any type of layer inside After Effects has. But if we click on a layer with holded Ctrl, you'll see this smaller icon. Then click Y to switch on Pan Behind tool, and now you are working with the anchor point of current shape from Contents group. So, Selection tool with holded Ctrl key allows selecting shapes nested in current shape layer. You also have to remember about objects hierarchy inside Contents group, like fills, strokes, shapes. For example, if we scale rectangle using its transform properties, let me delete fill to see everything clearer. Stroke is scaling with the shape. But if I pull out the stroke from rectangle and place it below, stroke width will stay the same during transformations. And that's wonderful! Let's talk about Pen tool. I will draw a simple open spline just for demonstration, and let's have a look at the full list of its tools. This one adds new vertex to Bezier path. Also, we can delete vertex using this tool. This one is for converting Bezier point from corner to smooth and vice versa. Let's edit direction lines, and you see that it's not synchronized with the second one. To make them synchronized, select one, hold Alt and drag. Now they are synchronized. The next cool thing about work with pen in After Effects is possibility to edit selected point using Transform tool. Select 3 points, press combination Ctrl-T, and now these 3 points can be transformed like this. Really cool! How to close the spline? Pretty obvious thing, just join its first and last points. Unfortunately, it is not so obvious about how to open the spline. For this, select 2 points between which you want spline to be opened, right-click, Mask and Shape Path, and uncheck Closed. That's it. Let's talk about stroke options in After Effects. If you're an experienced illustrator or designer, the question about how to round line gaps and joints automatically appears in your head. For demonstration, I will draw a simple spline using Pen tool, open up the Shape layer, Contents, Shape, Stroke. Stroke group contains all stroke settings, like color, opacity, width, and these 2 drop-downs are the answer to the question about rounding caps and joints. Select a line cap, round cap, and now you see that caps are rounded. And the line join is responsible for rounding stroke and line joints. You see that. The next parameter is dashes. It creates dashed line. Hit plus to make a dashed line. Now it's done. Increase the dash size to see the result. What is also cool, we can add new dashes and gaps like in Illustrator. Hit plus, new gap was created, edit its size, and if we hit plus one more time, the dash will be created. You can get really nice results by adding new dashes and gaps and adjusting their sizes. The next parameter is offset. By adjusting its value, we can actually offset the dash line. And this property also can be animated. For example, make one keyframe at the beginning of a timeline, then move to 1 second and change its value. Where's the result? That's pretty nice. You can use dashes for creating some kind of object trail like here. Let's talk about masks. You can create masks using the same drawing tools. Masks are shapes drawn on a layer to control its visibility. To create mask on a shape layer, select any drawing tool and attention. Switch to the Mode tool creates mask. Now you can create a mask using any drawing tool. It's also easy to create the mask on other types of layer, not shape layers. Let's create a solid layer. Right-click at any empty area of timeline, select New, Solid, and hit OK. If you choose any of drawing tools, Mode tool creates mask is already turned on, and there is no possibility to switch to shape creating mode. And that's because it's available to create only masks, using drawing tools on all types of layers except shape layers. Let's create a vignette and have an overview of main mask settings. Double-click on Rectangle tool to create comp size shape. Make it darker in color. Then select Ellipse tool. Switch to Tool Creates Mask mode and draw the mask on this shape. Open mask setting by hitting MM. And in this drop-down select Subtract, so that we have subtract mask shape from visibility of current layer. You can set the mode of mask using this drop-down. The most common are these 3. Add shows the region determined by the shape of mask. Subtract subtracts the shape of mask from layer. Intersect works only when we have 2 or more masks on a layer, so that it shows the region determined by their intersection. We will get back later to other modes, and Known mode turns off the mask. Below, it's Mask Path property. It determines the form of our mask and it also can be animated. Then Feather property controls mask edges blurriness. And we can edit the mask influence limit by adjusting expansion parameter. Opacity controls opacity, it's obvious. Play around with these settings. So now the vignette is ready and we can create a magic wedding videos. After a quick review of drawing tools and masks, let's dive into practice and create a Game Boy illustration using shape layers and animate Tetris game which will be displayed on its screen. Please try to draw the Game Boy illustration on the one shape layer, and of course try to do this by yourself without using our tips. But if it's really hard to understand, we will explain everything further in the video. Create new composition 1000 by 1000, 30 frames per second, duration of 10 seconds. Then let's set up the After Effects grid. For that, go to Edit, Preferences, Grids and Guides, and change parameters value grid line every to 100 pixels and subdivisions to 4, so that one cell of grid equals 25 pixels. Turn on the visibility of grid, and I have created separate composition with color palette. I'll drag it here, then create rounded rectangle in the center of our composition. Size about 400 by 600. Game Boy has a larger roundness of right bottom angle. Let's create it. For that, go to Contents, Rectangle, Rectangle Path, right-click, and convert to Bezier Path. So then we have converted rectangle path to editable Bezier path, which we now can easily transform. Select these 2 points, press Ctrl T, and transform them this way. Now set the color and stroke for our rectangle. Using the same technique, draw the screen background. Now let's draw the movement buttons. Create a rounded rectangle, this size, this roundness, duplicate, rotate it by 19 degrees. Now group them, name the group arrows, select the group and press Add. In this drop-down, select Merge Paths. Merge Paths is a shape modifier which works as Pathfinder in Illustrator. We can add, subtract, determine the figure by intersections of 2 others, exclude intersection and merge paths of different shapes. Select Add in this drop-down so that we edit paths of 2 rectangles. Be careful to make the modifier work correctly, place it in the same group with shapes you want to modify, and of course place it below these shapes. Make round joins, draw a circle above it, and make it darker. Now let's draw a circle of buttons. Create rounded rectangle about this size. This roundness. Change color. Then create a circle size of 50 by 50. Change its color. Set the stroke width and color. And place it here. Duplicate it. Move to the right. Fine. Group these three elements. Rotate them. And place it here. Good. Now draw start and pause buttons using rounded rectangle tool. Now let's add some details. I'll draw a dynamic using pen tool. Set up the stroke. Set line caps type to round. And it's done. Let's add few more details. And the Game Boy illustration is mostly done. The only missing thing is a screen with animated game. Create composition 200 by 275, as it can be divided by 25. Double-click to create rectangle of comp size, change its color, so that we have created background. Then create a rectangle with size of 25 by 25. Go to View, Snap to Grid. With the help of its duplicates, draw a figure according to the grid. Group these rectangles, name the group Figure 1, and let's move it to the final position. Duplicate this group, move it a little bit, change it to create a difference, and create the third figure in the same way. Now it's time to animate. Leave visible only one figure. Move to time of 2 seconds on a timeline. Open Contents, Figure 1, Transform, Position, and create a keyframe. Move to the start of timeline and place the figure somewhere up out of the screen. So that we have created animation of figure fall. But that's really boring example of Tetris game. So let's create a rotation of figure. Move to about 1 second and 15 frames on the timeline. Create a keyframe on a rotation and position figure properties. And pay attention that we are working with figure transform properties, not a shape layer. Now move 1 frame leftwards and change these properties, like this. Align everything to grid. Make a quick preview, and the only thing we have to correct is this diagonal movement. For that, copy X value from this keyframe and paste it to X field of first keyframe. Animation of one figure is done. Animate other figures in the same way. Let's create blinking of the first row and its disappearance. It will happen about this time. Select Layer and press Ctrl-Shift-D, so that we split our layer. Select the Rectangle tool, switch to Create Mask mode and draw a mask on the duplicate. After that, create copy of duplicate, open Mask Properties and check the inverted box. Now let's create blinking of the first row. For that, animate opacity property of the first duplicate. Good. After that, create animation of the second row replacing first. Animate position property of the copy of our duplicate. And that's mostly like a real game, but movement is too smooth for the old console. Let's change it. Create a new adjustment layer. For that, right-click on empty area of timeline, New, Adjustment Layer. Let me explain what Adjustment Layer does. All effects in After Effects can be applied to layers, and they always affect the layer they apply to, no others. But if we want to apply the same effect to many layers at once, Adjustment Layer is created for this. Any effects applied to an adjustment layer affect all layers below it in the layers taken order. Now, select Created Adjustment Layer, type Posterize Time in search field of Effects and Presets panel, and drag this effect on selected layer. What this effect does, it changes the animation frame rate of the layer it applied to. The frame rate of our composition is 30 frames per second, but if I change the posterized time value to 5, everything below adjustment layer will play with frame rate of 5. Let's correct the keyframes on opacity property of the layer to make the animation readable with this frame rate. And position if needed. Looks nice. Animation of Tetris game is done. Now move to Game Boy composition and place Tetris composition inside it. Place it like this. And let's create a stroke using layer styles. For that, select Tetris composition, go to Layer, Layer Styles, Stroke. Set the stroke this way. Done. Now watch the result. Pretty nice. So we've learned how to draw something inside After Effects, but it is pretty common practice when you need to animate illustration created by someone else in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. There is no need to recreate it inside After Effects from scratch. Program supports import of AI, PSD, PSB, EPS, PDF, and files of many other formats. Let's consider the case when illustration is given to us in Adobe Illustrator format. Import attached to the lesson file, Lesson to Galaxy AI, and in this drop-down select Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. So that composition with the same name has appeared in Project panel. Open it. Switch off the grid visibility. And what a wonderful theme! Each object is on separate layer. Pay attention to one thing. Any separate object you want to animate in After Effects separately should be on its own separate layer in Adobe Illustrator. Since we import the vector format file, it must be scalable with no quality loss. So let's check it. Select the sun layer, scale it, and no, it's not vector. By default, it's raster. But don't worry, it's really easy to fix. We can do this in two ways. The first one is to check Continuously Rasterize Box of a layer, here. If you don't have this box, press Toggle Switch Modes, or just press F4. So now let's scale sun layer again, and see that we have no pixelization. The second method is to convert vector layer to shape layers. Right-click on a layer and select Create Shapes from Vector Layer. New shape layers were automatically created. So we don't need Adobe Illustrator layers anymore. The main advantage of this method is that everything was automatically recreated using After Effects tools, so that we almost have full control under each element. We can change color, stroke, paths of shapes, but few disadvantages and difficulties still exist. The first is that opacity of layers and gradient fills or strokes are not supported in this kind of conversion. And the second is you can see these rectangular shapes around our objects. These are some kind of artboards from Adobe Illustrator. The opacity we can handle manually. For example, select clouds layers and set opacity value to 10%. It's like in original now. And artboards can also be handled manually. For example, select Shine layer, open its contents group, open group 1. This is our first circle of shining, and you see the merge paths and another group 1 inside our group. This is an artboard. You can remove it. Of course, deleting this manually is annoying, so here is the good news for you. A script that can solve this problem exists. It calls Explode Shape Layers. It's unfortunately not free. You can buy it on aescripts.com. And here's the magic button, Remove Artboards. Click it, and bam, no artboards. You can undo conversion if you don't want to remove artboards, because the next thing we're gonna cover is parenting. You can work with Adobe Illustrator layers. Let's create planets animation and find out what is parenting. You can change composition duration to 5 seconds, press Ctrl K to open composition settings, change the duration here. So select the blue planet, move its anchor point to the center of sun, hold Ctrl to enable snapping while editing anchor point position. And now let's create animation of planet rotating around the sun. Open rotation property of blue planet, create a keyframe in the beginning of timeline, move to 5 seconds, and change its value to 1 turnover. Nice. Now let's make our small yellow planet a satellite of blue one. It's not necessary to copy keyframes from rotation property and change anchor point position. We can do this faster and easier using parenting tool. All we have to do is set the blue planet as parent layer for small yellow here, in this column called Parent. If you don't have this column, just right-click on these header columns and check the parent. Move to start of timeline, select the helix, which is called Pick Whip tool, and drag it on a layer you want to make parent for current. Or just select a parent layer in this drop-down. Now satellite moves with the planet. Let's create satellite rotation around blue planet. For this, select yellow planet and move its anchor point to the center of blue. And animate rotation property. Set a keyframe on the 0 frame, move to 5 seconds, and set the value to -2 turnovers. Take a look at result. Good. So we have created the animation of a really small galaxy using parenting. Parenting is really useful thing in After Effects and motion design in general. It makes your work easier, so you have to know about it. The next awesome thing which will make your animation better is bouncing moves. Bouncing moves happen according to damping oscillation law. Sounds scary and scientific, but it's really fun on practice despite it will be implemented using JavaScript. Let me show you. Let's draw a tree. Take rounded rectangle tool, draw a tree crown, increase the angle roundness, and paint it in green color. Now draw the tree trunk using rectangle tool and paint it in orange or brown, whatever you want. Place the trunk layer below crown, then move trunk's anchor point to the bottom, crown to its bottom, and parent crown to the trunk. Now let's make this tree appear by changing scale from 0 to 100. Select Scale property of trunk and move 10 frames forward, create a keyframe, then move to frame 0 and change Scale property to 0. We've created this kind of boring appearance animation. Now open attached to the lesson text file. It contains this scary piece of code. It is the JavaScript expression that will help us to create cool bouncing animation. Copy it. Hold Alt and click on the clocks near scale, so that expression field appeared. Paste it. And watch what we've got! Cool bouncing animation. Let's have a look at how it works. Calm down, I'm not going to explain any math formulas. All you have to know is just that you need to change values of these three parameters to influence the result. The first is amplitude. I think it's clear, the more the value, the more the start amplitude of oscillations. Change it to 1, for example, and you will see that amplitude has increased a little bit. The next is frequency. The more its value, the more the quantity of oscillations will be. And the last parameter is delay. It determines how fast oscillations will fade. The more its value, the faster oscillation fade. Let's set the 9 here and watch the result. It's fading really faster. Let's set the optimal values. Amplitude .06, frequency 2 and delay 4. It's important to know that this expression will work properly only in case when last keyframe has non-zero speed. Usually we can achieve smooth effect by using F9 at first, and then turning the last keyframe to linear by clicking on it with holding Ctrl key. Yeah, now we have smoother bounce. Let's create bounce on rotation property. Set 2 keyframes, like this. Offset them a little bit. Then right-click on Scale property, copy expression only, and paste it on rotation. Now the rotation also has fading oscillations. Copy the keyframes from rotation property and paste it to rotation of tree crown. And offset it again. And we got a really nice result. Cool bouncing animation. Of course, bouncing moves are the things that you have to experiment a lot with. You will do so in your homework. The main task for you is to recreate one of these illustrations using After Effects drawing tools and animated appearance using all things you learned on a lesson. Of course, if you're a creative person, you can draw your own illustration and animate it. And that's all for today. Good luck with your homework and see you on the next lesson.